Barak is here. Welcome. Okay, I wanted to comment on, just in time, just a quick comment on the end of last year, which is a long time ago. We discussed that there's this pasuk in Keheles that parallels our parsha. I didn't know exactly how, but it's all very obvious. So I just wanted to make it clear. Show you how clear it is. It's like this. The pasuk says in Keheles, Perek Yud, pasuk Yud Tes. Perek Yud, pasuk Yud Tes. We spoke about this pasuk in Keheles and the connection to Yosef. I don't have to review them. I just want to focus on this pasuk. The pasuk says, "L'schoik oisim lechem." Keheles Perek Yud, pasuk Yud Tes. L'schoik oisim lechem. For laughter you make bread, and I have no idea what that means. Okay. L'schoik oisim lechem. You know why you make bread? For schoik. That's what the pasuk is saying, right? Which I guess means something like eating leads to schoik. Or maybe eating together leads to schoik. Okay? Fact is that in our parsha, so again, I'm not going to show you how the psukim connect. It's not important. The fact is in our parsha, the Eishes Adonov claims that Yosef was brought l'tzachek. She tells her husband and the Anshe Abayis that this fellow was brought l'tzachek. That's what he was brought for. We discussed l'tzachek means tashmish, as it says by Yitzchak, by Yashkef Avimelech Barach, Yitzchak l'tzachek is Rivka, and she was claiming that you brought him here l'tzachek, which maybe was true. In fact, maybe not. We discussed that. But
she's Zakbanu to them,
Zakbanu, right? Because she's including them. Anyways, Yosef avoided the lechem, right? Yosef had everything but for the lechem. And the question is, does that mean he also doesn't have control of her? Does that mean bread? Or does that also mean just the Isha? Because maybe lechem is a euphemism for the Isha. Or, perhaps, as we discussed, the purpose of not eating their bread is to stay away from their women, which is why pas akam is also. Because well, pitam mishum this, mishum that, mishum b'nei sehem. They say mishum davarach because of good desire. So, if l'schoik oisim lechem, if lechem is to lead to tzachik, and you avoid the lechem, then obviously you're not there l'tzachik. Right? She claimed that he's here l'tzachik one. He's not eating the lechem. Teretz, he's not eating the lechem. We said there's two reasons why not to eat the lechem. Either because the mitzvah don't like the Ivrim to eat the lechem, or Yosef doesn't want to eat the lechem, like Daniel didn't want to eat the pasbag hamelach we discussed, which is about Yosef's achaka from Bnei Sehem. So if Yosef's not eating the lechem, it means he can't eat he doesn't take the woman either. Ki myself b'sharat ishtay. And that's because the schoik oisim lechem, because lechem and schoik go together. Meaning, if there's lechem, there's going to be schoik, and the ones who you eat with are the ones who you mitzachik with, or something like that. And therefore, by not eating with them, the mitzvah, he's showing that no, he's not there l'tzachik.
Is that possibly the reason for the mitzvah prohibition?
Why? Because they won't marry the Ivrim?
I don't know. Is it?
I don't know.
Possible?
Don't know. Interesting.
Since today,
Right.
one of the Shana Salarais is saying.
What? Right. Okay, so up to Pasuk Chaf. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to complete Perek Lamed, or at least complete what we are doing with Perek Lamed, and then we'll be ready to start the next Perek. And then it's going to be Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot. I don't know. We'll figure out. Maybe we won't start next Perek after Sukkot. We'll figure out what to do meanwhile. Okay, let's learn this Pasuk. Pasuk Chaf. Vayikach Adonai Yosef Oisoi, Vayitnehu El Beis HaSoihar, Mekoyim Asher Asira HaMelech Asurim, Vayisham Bebeis HaSoihar. So it's one of these psukim that are don't have that much, don't seem so interesting, as it were, but there's a lot going on. Firstly, the pasuk says he took him and placed him there, which is quite wordy. Right? He took him and placed him there. Meaning he could have said he commanded for him to be jailed, to be put into jail. His master took him and placed him there. What's the significance of that phrase? Secondly, okay, what does the pasuk describe the basis of? Mekoim asher asir hamelach asurim. It's the place where the king's prisoners are imprisoned. Now he's not a king's prisoner. Now it's we see for the next paragraph that the king's prisoners end up there because the Chumash comes out from B'choite L'melech Mitzrayim, right? And the pasuk Aleph and Parak Mem, we have the Melech Mitzrayim figures twice, which is a continuation of this pasuk Chaf, where it says the king's prisoners are there. And the next thing we know, there's going to be a sin to the king, political prisoners. Well, not political prisoners. Maybe it's, I don't know if you call it political, but upon the king's prisoners, right? So what's Yosef doing in a prison that's made for the king's prisoners? If he's being put into jail as a criminal, well, he's in the wrong jail, right?
Oh, the Sar Tabachim is the executioner, chief executioner, and therefore he's in charge of the punishment.
Right. That's fine. Right. This jail was in the Beis HaTabachim. That's what it says in Parak Mem.
He doesn't have a secretary.
Okay, right. That's the jail, right. So look in Parak Mem pasuk Yud, where we see that the Mishmar was Beis HaTabachim. Okay, this Mishmar was under the control of the Sar Tabachim, as it says in Parak Mem pasuk Yud, when the Mashkim says the story. So, okay, which we wouldn't see that from. Probably everyone knows that, but you wouldn't see that from here. You don't see that he was still under control of the Sar Tabachim. You see that from later because it says that the Mishmar was Beis HaTabachim. Okay, but the fact is still, if he's putting him in jail, he's still in the wrong jail. Because he has this jail here, or whatever. It doesn't belong there.
Is there supposed to be a different jail?
If this jail is the one dedicated, no. The point is like this. I don't know if there's supposed to be a different jail or not. But if this jail is for the king's prisoners,
he's not that kind.
Then the Sar Tabachim is probably doing something wrong by putting him there. No.
Maybe it's
right? No, the king. This is the king's jail, which has the Sar Tabachim in charge of. What's he doing, mixing in his own personal vendettas, putting him there?
Mm-hmm.
There's just something incongruous about it. I'm not saying Here's what I'm not asking. Here's what I never would ask. Yeah. Based on my knowledge of the politics in Egypt, I think that the Sar Tabachim did a crime. That's not what I'm asking. I'm saying something incongruous. Yeah. The pasuk saying he put Yosef in the jail of the king's prison. Hi. That's my question. It doesn't add up.
We know he has prerogative to do that. He has the ability to do that.
Say that maybe. We don't know. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But it's just completely incongruous that he's putting him into a place which is the king's prison. What's the pasuk saying? Why is he there? Okay, why is he there is a different question. In other words, why is it significant for the Yosef narrative that he's in the jail of the king's prison? That we know, because Yosef is playing with kingship here. That's all Yosef, everything's about king. And it's all about Sarim and so on. We'll talk about more. Right. But just, why is he putting him in? How does it read that you jail him and you put him in the wrong jail? Let's say, okay?
And how did it come about that he was...
Yeah, how do you read it, right? A guy mugged someone and they put him into the white collar. Like, okay, wait, what just happened? That's my question. That's my question. Doesn't add up. The story doesn't add up. And then that last part of the pasuk is very difficult. Vayisham b'beis Yisrael. What is the pasuk saying? Vayisham b'beis Yisrael. What to say? Some people, including a bit of Bechai, read the Vayisham b'beis Yisrael as if it's like an introduction to the next pasuk. Vayisham b'beis Yisrael. In other words, because we already had earlier in the story that he was very successful when he was in the house of Potiphar, and now it's going to happen again. Vayisham b'beis Yisrael, v'yeshem es Yosef. Okay, but the psukim don't read that way because the Ma'aseh breaks it up like this. Vayisham b'beis Yisrael is all fact. So let's focus on the last part of the pasuk. Vayisham b'beis Yisrael. You have to look at the context. So any of these strange things in the pasuk are very important to look. More often than not, you have the same kind of funny lashonos in the whole parasha. And we had this before because first of all, we have a very major focus on even this very expression, sham b'bayis, right? We had in pasuk Yud Aleph. Here it's Vayisham b'beis Yisrael. It's talking about where he is, which bias he's in. He's there in the bias. We had that in pasuk Yud Aleph, sham b'bayis, and that really picks up from pasuk Beis, Vahi b'veis Adonai HaMitzri. There again, the pasuk is stressing like, okay, where he is. Like, take note of his location, right? And we discussed in the whole parak that there's a bias in the Sada, and Yosef should have been working in the Sada, should have been working hard. Instead, he was in the bias, and that suggests that he's Atzilus, right? Mm-hmm. So, he's in the bias, he's not in the Sada, and now look where he is now. Now he's again in the bias, now he's in the base. So yeah, right. So
maybe it's the counter to that.
The counter to lounging in the bias instead of being in the Sada. And now look what a bias you got. You got a bias where you work, and we know that Yosef suffered there because the pasuk says in Tehillim, it says in Perik Pehei, Kuf Hei, Pasuk Yud Zayin Niches, Shalach Lefneim Ish Le'eved Nimka Yosef, Inu Vakevel Ragloi, Barzel Bo Nafshay. Inu Vakevel Ragloi. So they made him suffer with chains and irons. Ad Eis B'Dvar, we spoke about this until the time came. He was refined by the word of Hashem, and then the king sent to release him. Okay, some of the basic was fine. Less some of that we'll talk about that. But the point is that he was suffering, right? And we say that also in today's Hashem. So Yosef had to be soivel, even though he chose this ease in the Beis Adonov. He ended up being Sham, where he learned the value for how to work, suffer, persevere. Okay, fine. So that's one thing. That is one point of this Vayisham Beis. But I think if we put it all together, there's another meaning here. I mean, put all these three things, meaning that he took him and put him in this place, which is the place for the king's prisoners, and that's where he was. So I think the pshat is like this: the pasuk is not telling us that he was punished. It's not about a punishment at all. It's basically transferred. It's transferred. Because remember, without getting into the whole thing we discussed last time, the charge against Yosef wasn't exactly a charge. She was a charge against her husband, basically. Basically, look at the pshat. I don't think you were here, right? You weren't here from last. Basically, she comes to her husband and says, "You brought an issue." She had nothing. She didn't claim that Yosef did anything wrong. She just said that her husband. She said to her husband, "You brought an ivri l'tzachik me," which means to detach with me. What do you do? She was upset at her husband. Basically, you put this guy in charge of the house and you left. So, you basically replaced yourself with this guy, with this ivri. That's what she claimed. And maybe it was true. Maybe that was his intention, right? He doesn't deny it. Except when she says to him, "Oh, look, this is what your slave did to me," he gets upset. Okay? Basically, she's saying that he replaced you. That's the whole argument. It's not that she's saying, Yosef raped me or did something he wasn't allowed to do. That's never happened. It doesn't say anything like that. Okay, without going into that, the point is that it's not about a punishment. It's that she was demanding something from him to get Yosef out of the way. So he had to get Yosef out of the way. He had to get Yosef out of the way. That's what you see in the pasuk, because she tells him something and he doesn't do anything, and then pasuk Yotes reiterated when he heard her saying, okay, so it got to the point where he had to do something. What do you have to do? You have to get Yosef out of the way. So he takes him and he transfers him. That's the pasuk is saying. And Medrash says that, I think. Medrash says, like, on this pasuk, Medrash says, he told Yosef or something like he had to do something, he couldn't do anything because he couldn't make it look like there's nothing going on. But neither is he trying to punish him. So what's he doing essentially? He's transferring him. And not only that, he had a great bracha from Yosef. So he doesn't want to let him go. So he has to find him someplace where he's out of the way. Perfect. He has in his own compound the king's prison. So he takes it, he's like, look, I'm bumping you down. Right? Vahisham. And that's where you'll be. Until now you were there, now I want you to stay there. Oh, could I come out? No, you have to stay there. But it's not about being jailed. It's
but it is a demotion.
Yeah, it's like in between. Right, exactly. It's like now, instead of being in the bias or the Sada, there's a third place in this house, which is the Beis Hashem because he's a Sarat HaBachim. There's another thing he does. Besides for bias and Sada, like everyone else has, he also has this thing going on.
This wouldn't be the first.
This underground thing going on. Takes him, he puts him there, and that's where you're going to be.
There have been governments where it's known that the person who was in charge of executions was also nominally in charge of the person as well, and maybe they would report indirectly.
Yeah,
that's the concept. He's a Sar. He's not the.
Yeah, that's why. By the way, Sar Beis Hasayhar, which will be in the next passage. I think some people want to say it's. I think maybe the Medrash that says that's a Sar. Which is odd.
Seems strange. It seems to me that it would be a lower level functionary, but
okay. But it's in his house, right? Okay, he also says he's a Sar.
Yeah, but he's a Sar fellow king. He doesn't have to be in charge of it.
But he has the Beis Hasayhar in his thing.
Sure.
Okay. Anyways, so fine. That's what's going on over here, I think. And so the Asir Melech are there because the Sar Tabachim, as the chief executioner, he keeps the king's prisoners under his control, right? And then that's where Yosef was transferred to.
For all we know, by the way, for all we know, there's a compound that belongs to whoever is the Sar Tabachim, and it's given to whoever is appointed to that position, and the prison is located there. And he takes over that area, that estate.
Yeah, right. Could be.
So
Sure.
it's not like, what is it doing in his house?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's in his house. He's given that house. That estate.
100%. Right.
But that doesn't mean that he has to be running the prison directly.
Okay, right. I hear what you're saying. Right. That's true. That's true.
Because later when it says, was it, Vayi Hashem as Yosef, Vayi Elokosed, Vayi Tekina Beinei Sar V'Sasayar, if it's Paitifah, if it's Sar Tabachim, it's the same person.
Right.
So he has to say it again?
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's what it does not seem like it's the same person. Correct.
And again, it's a transfer to a much less pleasant place.
Yeah, but it's a transfer, right? So he begins. He doesn't want to move him out completely. He has to get him out of the way. On the other hand, he gained a lot from having him around, and that's still gained. Okay, now here's the thing. I wanted to say one thing about take a look. One point of this pasuk where the pasuk makes meaning in our pasuk, where basically because of his problem he had with the Isha, he ends up going into this pit, this underground place. Because it says later that it's a bar. And the next practice is a bar. So this happened. We see this in Merumbas in Mishlei. Take a look at the end of Parak Zayin and the end of Parak Tes. We keep on looking at these psukim in this parsha, and we sort of established very clearly that Mishlei is dealing with the son who has to become a Ben Chacham, and is referring to Yosef's challenges in his challenges to Isha. Right. So if you look at the end of Parak Zayin, which is where the woman tries to get the ksil, the pesi, right, the chasar leiv, okay, and he goes to her house, and she tells him the husband's away, and all that, fine, and he doesn't realize how dangerous it is, and as the parak ends, ki rabim chalolim hipila va'atzubim kol harugeha, darchesh oil besa, yardos el chadri mabes. Her bias goes down to Sha'ol, to the rooms of death, right? Mm-hmm. So Sha'ol, meaning there's the Bayis HaMitzri, and then just go there, what does that door go? That door goes down to the basement, right? Okay, that's where the king's prisoners are. You don't want to end up there. And those are the Chadrei Maves, because the next story we're going to know is that one of them is going to get his head chopped off, right? And the same thing you have in the Parak Tes, where again she calls out to the Pesi and the Chasar Lev, and she tells him Lechem Starim Yinam, right? We spoke about that. She's the Lechem Starim. She's the Lechem that he can't have. And right? Those who are summoned by her end up in the depths of Sha'il. So that's to go working with our parasha where Yosef ends up in the underground. Basically, he's in the same place, he's just underground. That's the whole difference. Which, of course, is we discussed this about Yosef being thrown into the bar, and it's like Sha'il. He went back there in the beginning of the
second time he's in the bar.
Yeah, the second time he's in the bar, right? And the bar is like Sha'il. As it says, what? Right? Something with it says a Sha'il.
So before you had Barbara came to mind, here you have Sar Mashkin and Sar.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we spoke about it then, right? And they sat down to eat bread. There's always bread going on, right? They throw them into a bar, and it's rake, and right. And yeah, here's I think we may have mentioned this then. In this bar, maybe he had ample lechem and yayin. Except we have to question: is he eating the bread? We're going to talk about this. We're going to get to that soon. Because in the house of the thing, in the house, I don't know. Let's see. Okay, let's see Pasuk Chafal. Okay, we're going to get to this soon. Is anything changed between his Hanhaga with the bread before and now? Okay, Vahi Hashem es Yosef. Right, so that's the point. So again, so the contrast is Vahi Hashem the Beis Hasar. Originally he was in the Beis HaMitzri, and now he's in the Beis Hasar. Look what a change it is, all because of the running with the Isha. That's what happens. The Isha leads you to the underground. Vahi Hashem es Yosef. Vayetel of Chased. Vayitin Chinu ve'enei Sar Beis Hasar. So let's say even Vahi Hashem es Yosef, of course, is basically the same thing we had already. Vahi Hashem es Yosef, exact same words. Pasuk Beis. So what changed? In other words, why does the pasuk say it again? Okay, what's the pasuk saying again? Teretz is pashut. Wait, before we get to that, the Hashem being with him, to remind you, Hashem being with him is something means that he's going to be king. Mm-hmm. Because when David becomes anointed to be king, the pasuk says Hashem is with him, and Ishmatzliach, pasuk Beis, it says when David showed all these things are to be king. So Yosef, having Hashem with him means he's ready to be king. He's ready to be a Gedula. Okay, so now, but wasn't he already in that status by Hashem as Yosef and pasuk Beis? The answer is, well, being thrown into jail means you're abandoned by Hashem. Right? That's not yes, Hashem was okay, but then something happened in between. He had a major downfall. But now he sets himself right again, right? So basically, we have that Yosef is Hashem was with Yosef, and is this Matzliach, which means he's ready to become king, which is his destiny. But there's a whole problem. There's a whole problem. After he works out that problem and he learns what he has to learn, and we'll talk about this a little more, what exactly changed, then he once again gets back to Vahi Hashem as Yosef. Okay? So he had a problem with being Feitay Feimar, which led to these challenges, and he had to learn something. We'll get to that soon, what changed, and then he can get back to having Hashem with him. Vayitilov Chosed. Okay, this is new, meaning before we had Chain, and now he has Chesed, right?
And now
he has Chain again, right? So just one word about Chesed, two things about Chesed rather. One thing is a pasuk in Tehillim that says Chesed Hashem me'olam ba'ad olam al yireov. I think I saw someone tell to this. Chesed Hashem me'olam ve'ad olam al yireov. So Yosef was Yirei Elokim, because he said, I can't do this evil, right? And he said Elokim ani Yoreh. He said that later. Yeah. But we discussed this about Eshes Chayil corresponding to the Bereshis, and Shekar Achim Behavel Yofi is Yosef, because he has Ched and Yofi, but it ends up being a problem. Isha Yiras Hashem Yitzal is Yosef, because he says Elokim ani Yoreh. And soon we'll get to the next passage. But the Chur is saying, I can't sin against God, even though he didn't use the word Yira. I think that's called fearing Hashem. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't say the word Yira. But then, okay, so he's Yirei Elokim, so now he gets Chesed. Okay? Now he gets Chesed, and the fact that he gets Chesed, I think, is continued in Perek Mem, where he asks Saramash in Pasuk Yud, he says, Vasisa na'im al Chesed. Okay, because Vayet Elav Chesed, and this pasuk, and we're learning So he gets Chesed. Now he's used to getting Chesed, and he expects Chesed, and he wants to challenge the Chesed. He tells the Sarmashkim what to do, and yet it doesn't work, right? I don't know why. We'll have to see. Meaning, given that pasuk Chafal says Vayet Elav Chesed, okay, Vayet Elav Chesed, so Sarmashkim should do this Chesed, right? That's what you expect. Sarmashkim should do the Chesed that he requests, and yet he doesn't. So what's that about? What changed between? So you ask another aspect. What changed between this pasuk and that? But because I think this pasuk is establishing a link, and therefore he expects Chesed to come, but it doesn't materialize later. Okay. And there's a Sar Beis Hasayim. Okay, so now we have another Sar, right? So we're getting used to this already. But we have to ask, why is Yosef always hanging around Sarim? Sar Tabachim, and now he's got the Sar Beis Hasayim. Of course, his next people are going to be the Sar Mashkim, Sar Leifim, and he's in the jail, which is for the king's prisoners. So he is always around Sarim and kings. Well, the obvious reason is because he's this is about his path to kingship.
Yeah, well, he could have taken a path which included people who are lower, right? But it means not to be broken.
Again, he could have what?
He could have spent some of the time with lowly people, but he didn't, because
right. Why would he spend time with lowly people if he
could have? Could have been that he just happened to, but it's not. Everything is direct. Everything is always
right.
In the level of sorry.
Right.
It fits that.
Right. And
same reason he comes down to the side in the caravan of pleasant.
Okay, that might be. That's your reason. That's not my reason.
Okay. It's related.
Yeah. I mean that everything happened. Exactly. Yeah. 100%. 100%. Right. Of course. Right. So he's going to come out of jail to be king. And he's not, to be second in command, right? And that's really important, the second in command, because the point is, as Parah tells him, so the point is that involved with all these sarim, and then he's going to basically surpass them, right? And even in this next pasuk, we'll see he's sort of control the sarim, okay? And take a look at this pasuk in Tehillim Kuf Hey. So we mentioned there it says he went to jail to suffer, right? To learn how to suffer, and he has to be refined until the time comes. So in Tehillim Kuf Hey, it's a very strange pasuk. I want to look at the pasuk I'll tell you a chiddush, and I should get it right. So Kuf Hey, let's start from pasuk Tezayin. First 15 pasuk we know. That's how you do. And anyways, what we need is really from Tezayin on. There was a hunger. This is talking about the hunger on the big hunger in the liberations. Yosef was sent before them to pave the way. He was sold as a slave. He suffered. Till the time came, right? Till the davar came, time of the davar came for him to be king, he had to be refined. Hashem sent a king. I think it means Hashem sent the king. Maybe it means the king sent to release him. Moshe al-Amin vayfatcheu, the one who ruled over nations, unbound him. Samait Adon leveisai, u'Moshe b'chol kinan. He made him a master in his house, and so Pari put Yosef atati al-Beisi, right? Apicha yishak al-Ami. Lesser sorrow ben nafshoy uzkein b'chakim. Lesser sorrow ben nafshoy means he allowed Yosef to lock up the sarm at his own wish. He gave Yosef the power, ben nafshoy means his own himself, was able to make the decision to lock up the sarm. Uzkein b'chakim, he outwitted, or he was wiser, or he made the elders of Egypt wise. So let's talk about the end of the pasuk for a moment. Uzkein b'chakim is because none of the Chatumim were able to interpret it, right? And Pari said, "Oh look, this guy's smart. He's so smart. No one's smart like him, right?" Meaning he outdid all the great sages of Egypt. They're very famous, the sages of Egypt. We'll show you something about that. Okay, that we understand. Now, and what does lesser sarva nafshe mean? That he was more powerful than the sarim. Right? Now, I'm very interested and very bothered for a long time, and I think I know the answer. This thing that the pasuk says that he was able to lock up the sarim. First of all, okay, he's higher than all the sarim. Yeah, maybe if you're higher than all the sarim, maybe that means that if you decide you should lock them up, they should go to jail. I don't know, but why is the pasuk making the stress about that he had the ability to lock them up? Okay, we'll get to that soon. But the point I want to make now is just that there's this idea about Yosef that he's busy with sarim. He's always trading with sarim and kings, and that's leading to this climax where he's going to be the highest sar, right? Okay, and that's very significant, of course, down to the Yosef story, but specifically because the sarim and the chachamim of Mitzrayim are very famous. Meaning, Mitzrayim is known for its great sarim and great wise men. That we see that in one place to look is in Yeshaya, Perek Yutes, numerous places in Tanakh. In Yeshaya, Perek Yutes, it talks about the Sarei Tzoyan became fools, the Chachmei Yoyetze Paroi didn't give him a good Eitzah. Don't say you're such Chachamim. Basically, Egypt has this renown for being such wise and powerful, great ministers. So the fact that Yosef, this little nobody, ends up surpassing all the Sarim and all the Chachamim of Egypt, that's the idea of it. Okay, so he's constantly in the story. He's trading with Sarim, and he's going to end up being beyond it. Like I said, I want to get back to that thing. What the pasuk is saying about lesser Sar Benafshe, that he had the ability to lock up Sarim. Okay, but before we do that, we'll go to the next pasuk. So before we do that, I want you to look at Kehelis. I want to go back to that pasuk we started with about the Stoik Yosef. That's in Kehelis Perek Yud, end of Perek Yud. Let's see if we can learn some things from there. End of Perek Yud in Kehelis. Start with a couple of points we made. Again, these are psukim we've been showing, starting from pasuk Yud Aleph, how it corresponds to Yosef. But I'm going to start just a quick comment on the pasuk Tezayin and on. A king shouldn't be a nar. Woe to you if your king is a nar. Okay, Yosef started off as a nar, and it's not good for the king to be a nar. The king has to be a ben chorim. And the sarim, something about when the sarim eat, I don't know what that's about. Ba'es and not ba'boker. Yosef has to wait for the right time. And not b'shsi. Yosef thought he was going to become a melech through the sahamashkim, but that didn't work out. Okay, next pasuk we spoke about. Now let's jump to pasuk Yud Tes. So I just wanted to bring out also to go talking about now. There's a big focus about the sarim in the Yosef story. And now I just want to darshan really from pasuk Yud Tes on and show you how it corresponds to our parsha. L'schoik oisim lechem. Okay, so Yosef's not eating the lechem. So then the charge that Yosef was brought to Tzachik has to be false. The yayin yisamach chayim. Yayin delights the living. Okay, so if lechem leads to schoik, okay, lechem's a bad thing, right? But yayin is a good thing. Yayin leads to life. Right. While schoik leads to death, right? Darkei sha'ol besa leads to the underground. So why is Yosef on the underground? Because of lechem. Because lechem leads to death. Because it leads to schoik, the isha leads to death. Okay, so now there's a dream. There's a Samashkim Sarah Eifim. Sarah Eifim dies, Samashkim lives. Because Yain is Samachayim. V'kesef Yanes Akoil. Yosef comes to Paro and says, Elokim Yanesh like Paro. And he takes care of everything. How does he take care of everything? Because he collects the kesef in Mitzrayim he collects all the kesef from Mitzrayim for Paro. Next passage tells us to be careful how you act towards a king. Why do you have to be careful how you act to a king? Because the birds of the heaven are going to take the sound and the baknafayim. So when the oif hashemayim is eating from the basket of the Sarah Eifim, we know that the Sarah Eifim is in big trouble for, what's the word? There's a word for this. Lese majesty or something like that, whatever. Right? You know what I'm talking about? Like disgracing the king. Disgracing the king. Okay, next pasuk. Shalach lach v'apnei hamayim k'reviyam t'ntzenu. Yosef has to take the lechem and send it off and wait till it comes back. Meaning the lechem of these years, wait, right? Don't consume the lechem of this year. Tein chelik l'shiva v'gam l'shmoina. You have to wait the 7 years of hunger and be ready for the 8th year. Ki lo seida ma'yir ro'a al ha'aretz, because you don't know what evil is coming. Okay, so that's all dashing on the Yosef story. Okay, now let's go weiter in our parak. So what we learned so far is that Yosef was transferred basically to another division, let's call it, and he got back his original madriga of Hashem being with him, plus this new thing of Chesed for some reason. Fine. Now let's go to Pasuk Beis. Vayitin sar hasar b'yad Yosef eis kol ha'asirim asher b'beis hasoyer. Well, look at this. He put in his hands all the prisoners. He put all the prisoners in Yosef's hands. So now, before we think about that, I want to comment. I don't think the Samashkim Sarifim were in Yosef's hands. It seems to be different, because if you look at the next parak, it says, Pasuk Dalid, Vayifkoid sa'at ha'bachim es Yosef itam vayeshares v'yisam. He appointed Yosef with them to serve them. To serve them. Here, the Pasuk is saying that all the Asirim Beis HaSoyer were given into Yosef's control, right? Sounds like Yosef is controlling them. Basically, Yosef became the vice, whatever, Sar Beis HaSoyer, right? That's what the Pasuk is saying. The Sar Beis HaSoyer said, "Oh, you're a good guy. You know, you forget it. Instead of me locking everyone up at night and whatever, and making sure everyone stays in, you do it." That's basically what the Pasuk is saying, and that's contrasted, I think, to the Samashkim Sarah Eifim, who maybe are high, I don't know why, but Yosef has to be shust. Okay. But the point is that the Pasuk makes this point about Yosef locking everyone up, Yosef being in charge of jail. And I think that's where that Pasuk in Tehillim is coming from, where it says, Lesa Sar B'nafshay. It means, even though the Pasuk is obviously talking about after Paroi promoted him, right? Because it says Shalach Melech, the king brought him, and Skinavi came. But the reason why it picks up this theme about Yosef having the ability to lock people up was because, as we've been discussing, why is Yosef always around Sarim? What's this whole Sar theme going on? Because Yosef is supposed to get past the Sarim. And the fact that here the Pasuk says, oh, he's in charge of the Sarim, is foreshadowing that Yosef eventually is going to become the second in command of the whole Egypt. So therefore the Pasuk says, Lesa Sar B'nafshay, that Yosef had the ability to lock people up, because it's really, even though the Pasuk is describing something that only happened later, but it's working with what we see in this pasuk, that everyone who's in jail is in Yosef's control. And that's foreshadowing this idea that Yosef is going to actually not just be the guy who's locking the doors, but actually have real control over the Sarim to lock them up. Okay? Now, let's see the end of the pasuk. Very strange pasuk. And everything they did there, he was doing. Okay, what does that mean, he was doing? Everything they did there, he was doing. So, says the Ibn Ezra, Ki'ilu he was doing. Because meaning he was in charge. So everything that happened in the jail was like as if he was doing it. He was in charge. Yeah, under his watch, so therefore it's Ki'ilu. Now, it's kind of an interesting thing. There's a fellow, Yosef ibn Kaspi, who's a great Maimonidean, great Rambam. Like the left, but okay, those were left. We're real Aristotelian. Okay, like he took the Rambam very, 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 very far. Some say too far. Too far. So definitely too far. And Ibn Kaspi says, I don't like that the Ibn Ezra says Ki'ilu Haya'isa. He says Chalila. He says no, Haya'isa. He was doing it. Why? He shows that there are many psukim that attribute an action to someone, even though he didn't actually do it, like Vayivin Shleimus Beis Hashem. And why is it so important to Ibn Kaspi? Why is he so upset about this? Because the Rambam has a paragraph in Nevuchim where he talks about all these psukim that say Hashem does this, Hashem does that, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a direct intervention from Hashem. Anything that happens in the world is called Hashem did it, because everything is ultimately traced back to Hashem. Ibn Kaspi doesn't reference this, but I'm sure this is why he's getting all worked up. So he's saying, what are you talking about? Ki'ilu Haya'isa. No, that's called Haya'isa. Stop it. That's called doing. And therefore, let's say the pasuk says Hashem did X, Y, Z. That's what the Rambam talks about, for example. Hashem told the fish and he spit out Yed. The fish was out of the buah. So Rambam shows no. Anything happens in this world is called Hashem did it.
So the definition of it is Hashem did it?
Right, yeah. Right, that's called doing. That Tanakh calls, that's what we got. Tanakh calls. He's doing it. Right, as long as you're the one of the causes in the chain, that's called Leisa. Okay, fine. You say maybe it's only the primary one. So here also you could say Yosef was the primary one. He was the brains behind the operation. So it's called Yosef. Why do you have to say Ki'ilu? So he doesn't like that David says Ki'ilu. Fine. But the Maisa, there's something going on over here. Because the pasuk says everything they were doing there, Hu HaYosef, right? So it's taking everything that happened and it's saying, oh, it was really his, not everyone else's. Right? It doesn't, if we just say like this, Yosef went to jail and Yosef did a whole operation. Yosef did the operation, he just came out. Okay, we say it's cool he did the operation. That's one of the problems. Problem is the pasuk is saying everything that happened there was Yosef doing. It's transferring everyone's things to Yosef, right? Now before we get to what that means, I think that's why the pasuk that we were busy with, less asar b'nafshay. B'nafshay means he himself could do it. Because it's working with this pasuk, right? He's not the sar beis asaya. But yet, the nafshay, right? It says if he's the sar beis asaya, right? He himself could do it, even though who is he? That's the chiddush. That he, Yosef, who's not the sar, not the melech, was able to do things. So now, so then the Ibn Ezra is right because the pasuk's point is, if the pasuk would just say Vayas Yosef, you have to say that when you're getting so worked up about it. It's not a problem. You have to say Ki'ilu Vayas Yosef. But the pasuk's point is to say not regular Vayas Yosef, it's to say that Ki'ilu, it's as if everything there was actually him. And therefore you could say less asar b'nafshay, even though really the sar beis asar was ultimately the one who was in charge of jail. But Yosef it's Ki'ilu Yosef was in charge, and everything that happened was attributed to Yosef, and therefore, as the next person going to say, everything was successful because everything in the jail was Ki'ilu Yosef was doing it, even though the Ma'aser were other people involved, but it was considered like Yosef, and therefore the whole thing got to Aslach. Okay. Ein sar beis asar roes kom uma biyode v'asher Hashem b'toy. So again, we have this thing about leaving everything there, but with a major difference. Doesn't say Kiyam Halechem. Doesn't say Kiyam Halechem, right? So here, Kama Uma. Before we had Uma, Kiyam Halechem. And here, it's plain Uma, unqualified. Okay. Not only that, if Kol Asher Oisim Sham Hu HaYosef, and there's the Sar HaOifim in the jail, does that mean that Yosef was involved in the Lechem? Dafka? Because Kol Asher Oisim Sham Hu HaYosef. I don't know. On the other hand, that comes later. I don't know. Okay, we'll have to look into that. What? Like I said before, it seems to be a little bit of a different relationship between Samash and Salifim. And until they came, it was something. It was news. Something changed. Yosef shows them, right?
They are the ones who potentially bring his to notice to the king, and they eventually do.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying in terms of like, was he in charge of them? Because I said before, it's there it says
Charging them?
Yeah, because it shows them. Here it says
Them.
right, serve them. So why is that? So we have to figure out. Yeah, so we have to figure out what that's about. In other words, if you ask the following question, it's which I just asked. It says Yadai doesn't exclude the bread. In addition, the last class said Kol Hashayim Shamhu Hayayse, and one of the prisoners was a Saramashkin, was a Maase Oifer. So Mashma Yosef was involved in Asiyas Oifer. But that I'm not so sure because this is describing pre-Saramashkin Oifer. Saramashkin Oifer didn't just join all the other Asirim. Naraya, because it seems like Yosef didn't control them, rather it was Basharas. Right? Assuming it seems like Basharas means like they were his superiors, right? Okay. Right. I think Yosef always was superiors, right? Okay, so we'll have to get into that. But the thing is like this. The thing is, and this will explain. I told you I have to tell you before what happened. Meaning, originally Hashem was with Yosef, but Yosef was Yefei Torah Yefei Mara, and Shekach. Yeah, but right. But I'm saying the losing Hashem as Yosef was because he's Yefei Torah Yefei Mara, and the Shekach Yofi, big problems, right? Okay.
That's the key. Come here.
Well, yes, we can be really keen. Now, Yosef can't have the mitzvah lechem, but he has to stay away from the mitzvah lechem. Of course, eventually, we discussed it in the past, of course, eventually Yosef is not in charge of the whole bread of Mitzrayim, the whole operation. So, Elamai, something had to happen, right? Something had to happen. So, what had to happen? Then she gets the fruit of her hand. Now, Yosef
makes the lechem.
I don't know, it's lechem matzah l'soichel, right? It's bread. She's busy with bread there. It's lechem a few times in Ishmael, no?
It's almost like a
right. All right, and then there's bichapel, right? That's bichapel seems to be a karam. So then tenulam and priyadeha would be wine. Comes that right? Which I think I said that another time. Tenulam and priyadeha would be wine. Okay, which is interesting because Yosef saves us Hamashkin in the next story. It doesn't save us salvation, and yet it's all about him eventually getting charged with lechem, right? So we have to figure out exactly the steps over here. But the point I'm saying now is like this: Vahi Hashem is Yosef. But he has this thing with Mara, which he has to learn how actually that's a problem. It can end up being problems. Now, again, he has Chain. He has Chain, which we mentioned this I think when we started. Chain is a problem, but he ends up getting Chain again. Did you ask this question? I told you when he has Chain Tifar and Sheker Chain, so he has to learn how to do it some other way. Okay, so the Yofi seems to work out. But the chain comes right back. So I don't know how that works.
Come back alone.
Maybe, right? Maybe chain with it. Right, I was thinking that too. Maybe it's only sheker and hevel. Plain sheker, you can take it. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, so the point is like this. So the point is Yosef has Hashem with him, so he's ready to become king, and they're in charge of the lechem. But he has a problem of therefore he has to stay away from the lechem, and maybe because of the susceptibility that's going to get into the isha. You can say like that. And after he learns Yiras Hashem, then he can be in charge of the lechem. So therefore, what? All right. So therefore, I think there's a point over here. That only originally is he not in charge of the lechem, but now it changes, right?
Even the base of Sarah, he's already given up on the Feitar Mara.
Maybe he's given up the Feitar Mara, right? And therefore, it's not a problem. Now, of course, like I said, there's clearly still a major tension with the bread because he gets the Sarah from killed. Or whatever. Sorry from dies, how much he doesn't.
Well, he has a distance from him, maybe that's the idea.
Okay, but yeah. No, I'm saying, so what changed? I'm saying something changed. Originally he couldn't touch the bread, now he could. But he still seems to, there's still a bread issue going on.
Yeah.
Okay, now, so what are we going to do for next week? Let's figure it out.